sure I'm looking at the right camera here. Now, I know I don't normally do live streams sort of on the cuff like this, where it's right in my phone and I don't have graphics and stuff. But I just thought that it might be kind of interesting to talk a little bit about the 2025 Canadian federal election. And I, along with most of the rest of the country, I think, was taking a look at the. Am I looking at the right camera? I don't know if I'm looking at the right camera. There's two cameras on this thing. I think it's over here. Geez, you think 20 years in broadcasting that I would that I would learn to look at the right camera. Anyway, we'll go back to that, I guess. So anyway, yeah, just it's. I think like most of Canada, I think that. No, I'll look this way. Yeah, I think like most of Canada, I was watching the election results, and I gotta say this year has been very, very interesting. One of the things that I was very, very surprised at is that Pierre Poilievre ended up losing his seat. As some of you may know, even though I am a Saskatchewan resident now, I'm originally from Ottawa. So, and I worked in media for a very long time. So, I mean, I needed a little bit of a break from Ottawa. Not that it isn't a beautiful city, and I'm very, very happy and well established out west. But it's always kind of interesting to sort of see it from a different perspective. Now, I'm not going to comment on an opinion of which side should have won or shouldn't have won and whatever. That's something that is better set up for bar fights and all kinds of other things. There's enough people fighting and slinging mud and everything online, and they can have fights in bars and whatever else and let them get themselves arrested for beating the shit out of each other over. It's like trying to win a sports argument, right? It's like trying to argue politics is like trying to argue who's the best sports team. There's never really going to be a clear winner. There's always going to be opinions and hurt feelings and a whole bunch of nonsense, and frankly you could probably make a good soap out of it. Anyway, going back to it, one of the things that I was very surprised at is I was very surprised that Pierre Poilievre ended up losing his seat. So I do have to give credit to, I can't remember his name, but the Liberal candidate in that riding that ended up in Carleton that ended up winning that seat. I think his name was Bruce Lovejoy or something like that. Yeah, I know, a great Ottawan I proved to be. Hard-won campaign, but as far as I would say that prior to the Trump administration getting reelected, I would have been really surprised if the Conservatives lost, but because the political spectrum changes as frequently as it does, I honestly have to say that it could have gone either way. And I am kind of glad that it was a little bit more even and that there were a number of people that went out to vote. What do I think is going to happen with the Carney government? I have no friggin' idea. I obviously have a lot of friends that are American, very close friends that are American, and I have a lot of people asking me about what I think I'm going to happen. If I knew what the fuck was going to happen, I would be a rich man. I don't think anybody really knew the extent of what was going to happen with the U.S. election either. I think it's going to be a very interesting 6 months to a year. I think a lot of it is really going to depend on, right, because they're still counting. It's a very clear win for the Liberals, but there's still some ridings that are counting. So it's really going to depend a lot, I think, on how those go. If it ends up being a majority government or a minority government, which at least at the time of me doing this little live stream, and from what I've seen, it still could go either way, whether it's a majority or a minority. I think if it ends up being a majority, I think you're going to see this sort of typical 100-day plan and that sort of thing. My understanding is that Mr. Carney has now, he ended up calling President Trump already. I don't know what the results of that call are. I'm sure they'll be very interesting. Apparently we are supposedly better fit as the 51st state if you listen to the president south of the border. So I'm not going to comment on that, but I will say, yeah, I think we're going to see, in the case of a majority government, I think we're going to be seeing a sort of 100-day plan. But I have no idea what's going to happen. I will say that everything that I thought might happen has been basically like taking a bunch of eggs and stuff and just putting them in a friggin' blender. I have no idea. I feel like it used to be fun years ago, at least for me, to kind of try and project what the outcome for federal elections would be. But it's such a complete wild card. It almost feels like every year, to some extent or another, the result ends up being crazier than anything that you would expect to see out of an article from The Onion. So, if you want to be putting money on it, I probably wouldn't, because it could go either way. What is going to be interesting is what is going to go on with the Conservative Party, because, obviously, Poilievre has said that he intends to remain as the leader of the party. I don't know how long that's going to be a reality, because, there was quite a big push for this big election, and I think that there's a very high possibility. This is one guess that I'll make. I think that there's a very high possibility that that the Conservatives will wind up looking for another leader. I think we're going to probably see that in maybe 6 to 8 months. I don't know if that's true, but my guess would be that in 6 to 8 months, I would say there's probably about a 70 to 80% chance that the Conservatives will elect, or not elect, well, I guess internally, they'll decide to have somebody else basically run the party. I don't necessarily see them turning around to Pierre Poilievre and saying, you know what, you lost your seat. We didn't get. It was very close. I think the end result was like 170 something or other. Hi from Quebec. Oh, salut. Salut à tout le monde du mes amis au Québec. Je suis parfaitement bilingue aussi, là, mais après 5 ans Saskatchewan, j'ai un petit accent tête carré, là. So I have a little bit of an English accent, which I did not used to have. Hello. Yeah, so I think what's going to happen, and actually on the topic of Quebec, I wanted to run. I had a few interesting things that I wanted to say about Monsieur Blanchet of the Bloc Québécois, because we do a lot of French language programming, and I am very proud of the work that we have done in Quebec. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also there's a delay too. So, yeah. So anyway, I want to go back to my thoughts about the. I want to go. I just want to go back to my thoughts about the Conservatives, and then I'll move on from it. I think what's going to happen is I think the Conservatives are going very likely to lob off and pick another leader. So I don't think that he is going to stick. Ouais, exactement. Plus de millions de Canadiens ont voté dans l'élection Canada. Yeah, and it's a completely. I think that's the most amount of people that have gone and elected in one election in years. Plus de 67 des électeurs admissibles ont voté à l'élection fédérale, ce qui représentait. Oh, it just disappeared. 67 des électeurs admissibles ont voté à l'élection fédérale, ce qui représente plus de 19,2 millions de personnes. Yeah, exactly. Oh, on YouTube, sound off. So you can't actually hear me. Okay. I'm going to look at the right camera. Sorry, I'm on my cell phone. I'm not actually at the studio right now. So I'm just sort of doing this right now. So yeah, I think I'm repeating myself, but I'm just trying to respond to comments as they come. Yeah, I think that there's there's a very high probability that the Conservatives will select another candidate. I don't think that it's going to remain Poilievre. I do think, in my personal opinion, irrespective of my political leanings, which I'm not going to go into here, I do think that for whatever passion that people have, I do think that Mr. Poilievre was a very effective, shall we say, I think he was a very effective leader of the official opposition. I think that he should be given credit for drawing a lot of attention for his passion, and he has been an agent for change. I would say he has absolutely been an agent for change. Sorry, my phone is blowing up here. I'm getting lots of comments and stuff from people, both through YouTube and others. I wasn't actually expecting that there would be people that would be doing that. Yeah, thanks. Come back later. Sound off. So yeah, I would say, yeah. So I think regardless, I think we do need to give Mr. Poilievre credit. He was and is very good at cutting through the quick. He is very good at a clear, concise message, regardless of whether you agree with his approach or not. He is a very, very effective communicator, and he is very, very good at distilling the essence of things. And he's also good at dealing with bullies. I know, and one of the things that I find in Canada is that we have a lot of this kind of passive aggressive bullshit, if you'll pardon my language, where we seem to have difficulty in this country between delineating the difference between fact and opinion. If we don't like something, a lot of people, if we don't like something or people don't like something, they'll turn around and say, well, that's your opinion, simply because they don't like what's being heard. And I think that that's a problem in a lot of places, but I think that I'm sorry you feel that way, and not actually being able to have an honest conversation about things is a problem. So what ends up happening is you have this kind of adult version of, you know, I know you are, but what am I? And so the dialogue never goes forward. You can't actually have, it's very difficult to have an honest conversation with somebody, especially if you disagree. You can't really agree to disagree anymore. It's always, you know, I believe this and I'm right and you believe that, so you're the devil incarnate and so on. And I think that's one thing that hurts. There are some people that can, and I try to do that, but I think we see a lot of this. But yeah, so short-term predictions, at least in terms of what's going to happen in the next 8 months. I think that Poilievre is going to, I'd say 70 to 80% chance of being kicked out of the party, which I think is a little unfair, because I think he was very good at drawing a lot of attention to important issues, regardless of whether or not you agree with them. But regardless, I think that's probably what's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen as somebody that was born and raised in the Ottawa region. Politics is a ruthless profession. You know, there are good people in politics and bad people in politics. And my time working in media, I have dealt with all kinds of personalities. And folks, there are good people that are in politics. There are some really fantastic people that are MPs and MLAs on the provincial level. And, you know, it's very easy it's not an easy job, man, because a friend of mine is an MLA, and he used to say, you know what, Corey, 50% of people hate you at any given time. And it's true, right? You're always dealing with the, you know, and I think a lot of people are doing it for good reasons. There are some that aren't, I would say, but, you know, I think that's something that's important to consider. So, Conservative, Poilievre out. That's my guess. Within, I'd say 70 to 80%. I personally think he's very good as an opposition leader. I think because of the way he communicates, and because, you know, you could say simply because he ruffles feathers, you know, but what he does do is he gets your attention, right? So he doesn't use a lot of this flowery language. If somebody is going around in circles and giving a non-answer, he will say, hey man, you're not answering my question. And he's, sounds good. So yeah, so I think the problem, and it looks like Claudius is back with us. So yeah, I would say that regardless of your opinion of Mr. Poilievre, positive or negative, what he is good at doing is he's good at cutting to the quick, and he doesn't go around in circles. You know, if he is in the House of Commons and somebody gives him, or a reporter for that matter, and I worked in media a long time, still do, just not for a network. But he's very, very good at turning around and saying, hey, man, you didn't answer this question, and he'll just ask it again. He's very, very, he will cut to the quick, and he doesn't really let people turn around and use this kind of word salad that you do tend to see a lot, with, you know, a whole lot of verbal blather without actually answering the question. And so what he's done, I would say, is that he has provided a lot of clarity. He makes people angry, obviously, not, you know, irrespective of whether you agree with his platform or not, but he's very, very clear and concise, and his intent is very clear with what he says, and he doesn't let people go in circles. And that tends to ruffle people's feathers, but you know what? I think it's necessary. I think it's better if people are clear with what they communicate. I think if something is bullshit, I think people should call it as bullshit. And I think for that reason, I would say that Poilievre is very, very good in that regard, for just kind of, sometimes you just need to shake things up by saying, no, I don't agree with you. I think this is bullshit, and using plain language. I guess if I were to take Mr. Poilievre's personality and I were to distill this whole blather on my end down to something really simple, I would say I think a lot of what his effectiveness is how he says things. You know, that old saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I think that is one of Mr. Poilievre's great gifts. On the topic of clarity, and I realize that this will not be a popular opinion, probably out west, I would like to talk about Monsieur Blanchet of the Bloc Québécois. Now, just out of full disclosure, I have done a lot of French language work. I am from Ottawa. I am bilingual. I speak English and French, you know, avec un petit accent de tête carrée là, après 5 ans in Saskatchewan. But I was born in the NCR, and I also do a lot of French language work. Yeah, that's also very interesting. Blanchet is a traitor for some Quebecois. Yeah, I know that there are some very strong, right, because he. Yeah, this is a good time to talk about Blanchet. Now, Blanchet, in a lot of ways, and I'm not talking just as a preface here, I'm not speaking in terms of his opinions or his policies or anything like that. I'm speaking strictly in terms of communication styles. One of the things so I'm being very careful to refer specifically to the style of communication and the method of communication as opposed to anything else. I think Monsieur Blanchet, in some ways, is like Monsieur Poilievre in that he's very, very clear. Regardless of whether you agree with Monsieur Blanchet or not, he is very, very smart. He also does not he will cut to the quick, and he's very honest about what he says. He does not bullshit. He does not mince words. And if somebody doesn't answer, he says so. He is a pragmatist in a lot of ways. He will concede. But I think, now coming from somebody that, sorry, I don't have a very comfortable seating position here. I'm just going to shift in my seat a bit because I'm at home. See if I can find a better way to sit. I'll just kneel. I do jiu-jitsu, yeah. So I would say, you know what, screw it. I'll keep this way. I'm like a cat. Yeah, so I think in the case of Blanchet, I think the reason he's a very different PQ leader. He's a very, very different No, it's okay. I'm just using my phone, so don't you don't need to apologize at all. Yeah, so I think with Blanchet, I think he is very pragmatic. He's very honest when he says, "Listen, I'm the Bloc Québécois, both in English and French." He's like, "Listen, you know, our goal is to separate. I am basically the leader of the Bloc, and my job is to my job is to separate. That's what the leader of the Bloc is, right? The secession of Quebec from Canada." However, one of the things that is interesting about Blanchet is that he plays a very interesting chess game. So, and I think, and our friend Claudia here, I think, has kind of alluded to it, where he's considered, where it was mentioned that he's considered a traitor to some Quebecers. And I think part of that is the way that he plays chess, if you will. I think what Blanchet sees is the long game. And sometimes in order to achieve or get closer to your aims, sometimes you have to make allies with people in order to get help to get closer to what you want. So I think, and this is just my personal assessment of Blanchet and having dealt with both English, having worked on both the English and French side of things. He is not opposed to creating alliances with unlikely bedfellows if he thinks that it will serve his own aims and what he sees as the aims for Quebec. Yeah. But the thing is, and again, yeah, he's seen as a traitor by some people, and right. But I think the thing is, and again, I'm not speaking to whether somebody is or is not good for their political party or for their riding. I'm only speaking to particular communication styles. What is unique about Blanchet, regardless of whether one agrees with Blanchet's politics or not, on the English or French side, I would say, I have a few interesting things I want to say about Premier Legault as well, but he wasn't in the federal side of things, so I'm probably going to leave that maybe for another one of these. But what I will say about Blanchet is he's clear. He's clear. He doesn't really use what I would call political or soft language. He doesn't go on and on and on with language that doesn't, like, he doesn't do what Trudeau, he doesn't do what Trudeau did. He doesn't go around and around and around and around in circles without actually answering anything. He's very, very direct in his communication style. If somebody asks him something, he will say yes or no, and he's very blunt about his assessment of what he thinks needs to be done. And again, I'm making a delineation, a big delineation between whether something is good or bad, because that's opinion and conjecture, and I'm not a political scientist. I'm just talking in terms of communication style. Both Poilievre and Blanchet have a very plain-spoken style of language. They don't talk in circles. They're very blunt when they need to be blunt, and that ruffles people's feathers, on top of, their opinions on where they should be, because it's blunt. It's like ripping a bandage off. And I think that it is interesting that Blanchet is able to do this. Do I agree with everything that he says? Absolutely not. Am I a separatist? No. Do I understand, why sentiments are why they are? I would say yes. But again, so if I distill this into a very simple takeaway, Blanchet is not an idiot. He is a clear communicator, and he is blunt. So he gets attention in sound bites, and sometimes attention is really the big thing of what you need, because once you get attention, then people are listening to you. They might be angry about it. They might disagree with you. They might think that you're a traitor. They might think that you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Any politician any politician whatsoever is going to have 50% of people hating them at any given time, right? Because you have, you have to have a platform, and not everybody's going to agree with your platform. That's just the long and the short of it. So, but he's no dummy. He's no dummy. He knows this, and and this is why we have electoral process. I find it very interesting, the approach that Blanchet has taken. I would say he is more direct than, say, Gilles Duceppe was. Gilles Duceppe, I would say, was not the strongest communicator. Um, you know, he's a politician. He uses political language, and it's a very soft language, and sometimes you need to be direct. So a lot of the time when somebody comes along and they're very, very direct, and I would say that Blanchet is even more direct in French communications even than English, and he's very direct in both. He's a good communicator, but he gets eyeballs and he gets attention. At least if you get people talking, there are good things about it. That having been said, it's not my place to speak to, what he is or isn't good for Quebec or not good for Quebec. I'm simply stating that he's a good communicator. He's good at cutting to the quick. He doesn't talk around in circles and go blah 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 like the former Prime Minister Trudeau did. He is not afraid to engage in direct confrontation verbally if need be. He's not afraid to say quite bluntly, no, this is not what the facts are, and he comes out with numbers to back it up, and he's not afraid to do that. And I think that is a skill that a lot of people don't have anymore. I think a lot of people are afraid of backing down, or are afraid of being confrontational. And I think in a world where, people turn around and say anything that they don't like as opinion, even if it's a fact, I think we need to have people that turn around and say, no, this is what I think, and you didn't answer my question, and that's the way it is, and offer supporting documentation to kind of back up their position. I think that's important, and these are things that both Blanchet and Poilievre are good at. They're good at being direct. They're good at being very clear about what it is that they want to do, and they're very clear communicators in general, and that's irrespective of whether people agree with them or not. But I also think that's why they are such polarizing figures. People don't like it when people come by and they just say, this is the way it is, and I'm not going to apologize for it. That's it. It's easier to turn around and be kind of mealy-mouthed and go around in circles, because then you can turn around and say, oh, well, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant, or that's not what I... And to be honest with you, this is exactly the kind of bullshit that I annoyed me in Ottawa. So I have a very non-Ottawa way of communication, right? Even though I'm from Ottawa, so it was an interesting time there, being born there. I don't have the Ottawa flavor. If I think somebody's being an idiot, I tell them they're an idiot, and if they go, "Excuse me, what'd you say?" Basically, yeah, you're an idiot. I'm not afraid of confrontation. I don't like confrontation, but I'm not afraid of voicing my disagreement with something in plain language, and I stand by the words that I use, even if sometimes I might have to eat them later. And I think that's something that's lost. I don't necessarily have to agree with Mr. Poilievre or Mr. Blanchet's platform to be able to respect their method of communications. And I think clarity of communications is extremely important. So, even if you think an elected official is the devil incarnate, just be aware that that's an opinion. We all have them. What's that old saying? Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. But just because somebody is good or isn't an asshole or isn't an asshole, or you don't agree with them, or you don't like their policies, or it doesn't benefit you, or somebody did something stupid, it doesn't mean that that person has not done anything good in their life, and it also does not mean that they're poor communicators. I can respect somebody that I don't like personally and still be able to recognize that they are good at what they do, even if I don't agree with them, even if I don't agree with the method that they choose to do so. Basically, I can turn around, like, here's a good example. Certain types of music I hate. I like some country music. A lot of country music I do not like, which probably is not good to be in the West if you don't like country music. That having been said, that doesn't necessarily mean, as a musician, that I'm going to turn around and say that if I don't like a song, let's say I don't like a song, I don't like a country song, or I don't like a particular song, I can still, as a musician, recognize that the song is good. I can recognize it. Let's say I go out and I have a beer with a musician, and I don't like his songs, I don't like his style of music, I don't like his style of playing, I think the guy's a dickhead. Maybe he came on to my girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. It doesn't fucking matter. Just because I think somebody's an asshole does not necessarily mean that that person is a bad. If I don't like their music, and I don't like their instrument, and I don't like their personality, and I don't like them, and I don't like the car they drive, and I don't like the way they live, if they can pick and they're amazing guitarists, I'm still going to be able to recognize that they are a good guitarist, that they are a good musician, that they are good at what they do, even if I think they're the biggest pieces of shit in the history of God's little green earth. And I think, so when I turn around and I make commentary on communication, I'm making a separation, I'm making a delineation between the communication styles and what I think is effective for particular federal politicians, even if I don't necessarily agree with them or don't like them or anything like that. And I think that's something that people don't really like to hear. We've already lost 3 people, but I'm sure they'll be back. I think, so even, do I agree with everything that Poilievre has said? No. Do I agree with everything that Blanchet has said? No. Would I subscribe to their platform in a lot of ways? No. Nobody's perfect. I don't like everybody's platform. Sorry, my leg's falling asleep here. But even so, that doesn't mean that they aren't providing things of value. And one way or another, being able to stir the pot is a great way to get attention. And the more people that you have listening to you and paying attention to you and what you're saying, the more people are potentially going to hear your message. And we'll turn to Trump for a minute. Regardless of whether or not you like Trump or you hate him or he's an asshole or he's this or he's that, he's very, very good at getting attention. He's good at saying things that get people riled up. The more people that are riled up, the more people are talking about him. The more people are talking about him, the more press he gets. The more press he gets, the more his name is around people's minds. The guy's good at getting attention. He's not always doing it in a great way, but he is doing it, right? Nobody's perfect. Do I agree with a lot of what's going on there? Absolutely not. Nor as with anybody, anywhere. Nobody's perfect. Now, let's go on to the winners of the campaign, shall we? Let's go on to the Liberals. And now I'm going to posit some opinions. I'll be very honest, I don't know a lot about Carney's platform. He, to me, is a bit of a wild card. When I think of Carney, I think of him as a banker. I am primarily familiar with Mark Carney as an economist and as a financials expert, and to be honest, with family that is originally largely from England, when I think of him as the head of the B of E, the Bank of England. So I don't think of him as a politician. in any way. And so it's very, very difficult for me to posit any opinion because I don't know what to make of his platform. I don't really, he kind of came out of nowhere. He kind of came out of the ass of politics. I know that he, for the longest time, had stated, from what I could see, that he was not intending to run for prime minister, and indeed, was reluctant to put his name in the hat. Then Prime Minister Trudeau had certainly asked him to run. Oh, gee, I don't know, I'm not sure, whatever. And then he did his duty, I guess, to toe the party line. And when Trudeau decided that even his wife couldn't stand him, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to make a bit of a mean-spirited joke here, but it seems well earned. I have a lot of respect for TVA. I've done several pilots and stuff and have had a lot of involvement in TVA, and I'm not really impressed with, some of the people at all the networks that I've worked at, but I have a lot of respect for TVA's journalists, and I got to be honest with you, if you are married to, somebody like Trudeau was married to, who was a longtime, well-respected journalist for TVA, and you get her to the point where she was like, you know what, fuck you, I'm out. I'm not going to make you look bad. I'm not going to go, but I'm out. Like, I'm done. You really have to wonder what the hell is going on, because, it really would take a lot for somebody to just say, you know what, I'm done with you. Like, I'm done. There aren't enough selfies in the world, wearing a ball cap, shopping at Canadian Tire, that's going to undo that. She was married to Trudeau for however many years, and then his wife just suddenly goes after Bill 63 and all this stuff, and turns around and goes, yeah, you know what, fuck you, I'm out. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say there. But yeah, so we'll wrap that up with Carney. I don't really know a lot about his platform. I know of him as an economist. I know of him from his work, as the head of the Bank of England. And that's about the extent of how I know Carney. So it's very difficult for me, because he has not really been in politics as a writing, so to speak, for very long. To me, he's a bit of a ghost. And to me, that it makes me a little nervous when you have somebody that does not have a track record in public politics. You can't really turn around and say, oh, well, this person is going to be great at this and that and the other thing or whatever, because we don't know. We know he's an economist. We know he was a good banker, I guess. And, that's probably largely how he wound up in the position that he was in. And, I certainly hope that he can balance a balance sheet, because God knows his predecessor certainly could not. And I'm not going to say who I voted for, who I didn't vote for, but I will say that I've voted conservative in the past, and I voted liberal. I've voted based on how I felt, what I felt in my personal opinion, and that's just what it was, an opinion as to what I thought the country needed. But Carney, I don't really know. If he does do a good job at dealing with all of the things that we need to contend with right now, like, the potential annexation threats from south of the border, tariffs, getting our budget balanced somewhat, making things more affordable in a real way. And I don't mean doctored numbers and things like that. I would say that in my personal opinion, if he can get that going, good on him. I would be very, very happy If he is the man for the job, great. I am politically agnostic in that I don't tend to bleed for any particular party. I go based on who I feel is good for the job. And with Carney, I don't know. I have no idea. It's too early to tell. He doesn't have a background in federal politics. He doesn't have a. He's not. And he's an economist, and this is really his first major political front bencher kind of gig. And that's really the long and the short of it. And to me, that makes me nervous. That having been said, everybody's got to get a shot, right? He legitimately got in, and we just don't know how he's going to be yet. We have no idea. So it's really going to depend on those sorts of things. What is going to be interesting is how much of the former Prime Minister Trudeau's little pet projects are going to remain on the block. So it'll be interesting to see how Bill C-63/C11 and see if that ends up coming back, in some shape or form, or at least one that's more clearly defined. Canadian content, CRTC, that sort of thing. It'll be very, very interesting to see. My guess is some of this stuff is going to wind up on the chopping block. And the reason that I say this is because a lot of this stuff is the stuff that kind of got Trudeau in hot water in the first place. And I think this sort of diet socialist tin pot dictator type stuff, at least some of the stuff was starting to look that way. I think that was a lot of the stuff was really starting to turn a lot of Canadians off, whether they voiced it publicly or not. I think it would have been a very different scenario if Trudeau were still in office. I think that, in my opinion, I think he was coming a little bit off. I mean, how many people here watch The Simpsons? Honestly, is there anybody here that has not watched The Simpsons? I watch The Simpsons. I think it's great. That episode where Homer Simpson becomes a small town food critic, and he ends up sort of pissing everybody off, that kind of thing. I think that's kind of how a lot of people saw Trudeau at the end of it, and I think people were just a little worried about how far the rabbit hole would go. So I think, but with Carney, we just don't know. I guess to some degree we have to talk a little bit about Jagmeet Singh, I suppose. He lost. I don't think he was the greatest leader. As somebody that trains in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've seen him roll. I've seen videos of him rolling. He was really good. He was a blue belt at the time. Man, he's fucking fast. I often found I don't really understand how you can get as good as he got in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and because you have to be mentally and physically tough to do that. And I believe he's from Brampton, right? So he's tough. So he would know how to deal with, but some of the ways that he's dealt with stuff, and I felt that he sometimes came off as kind of mealy-mouthed, and it's like, I know there's some fight in him. I wish that I got to see a little bit more of it. It really came off to me that he would sort of hitch his wagon to, whatever would, suit his own aims or whatever. I suppose you could say that that's true to some degree of a lot of people, but, yeah, I don't think that there's, I think that the NDP is a is a party that's sort of drifting a little bit, and I think they need the right leader. I mean, big shoes to fill. In the case of Jack Layton, it would be impossible. But yeah, there hasn't really been anybody that has had that kind of steady hand on the steering wheel in order to kind of guide the NDP federally. So I think that's really the long and the short of it. I think it's going to be a little while before we start to see. I think it's going to be a little while before we start to see that sort of thing. I might actually post a little bit more. I might do a live stream tomorrow once there's more information about all of this. But yeah, that's just my personal opinion, such as it is. The Bloc, I've said my bit about the Bloc. Green, well, yeah, that'll be my comment with respect to the Green. Not that I don't think the Green has some good policies, but I don't see them, in any meaningful capacity in the House of Commons anytime soon. Sorry, I had to let that go to voicemail. Like I said, I'm just doing this on my phone right now, so every phone, every every single thing that I get, if somebody calls or texts or whatever, I don't have it in the studio or anything right now. I'm literally just doing this with my phone, and that's it. But yeah. So and then I should probably wrap this up in a few minutes too, anyway, because I've been going on for holy shit, I've been blathering on like a gas-fed duck for 46 minutes and 23 seconds. Wow. God, no wonder politics ends up filling up so much fucking content on the airways. You just go on and on and on and on and on and on about it, and there's no end. There's no end of it. You can have people sit there for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours just offering conjecture about politics and arguments and whatever. They should have, what they should have? There should be like an American Ninjas or American Gladiators type TV show where people have, there's like an obstacle course and they have these foam poles and stuff. And they, basically beat the shit out of each other with these foam poles on TV. And in order to win a political argument where there will never, ever, ever, ever be an end to it. That's what I think should happen. If somebody can't agree, then they have to go in the arena and they have to take their foam stuff and try to knock each other off a pillar. Fuck, I'd watch that. I'd watch that. I think that'd be great. It's like what I said earlier. It's like a sports argument. It's like trying to win a sports argument. Oh, Toronto sucks. Oh, Ottawa sucks. Oh, whatever. They're not going to win. Blah blah blah. So, anyway, that is my opinion on the leader's communications abilities or lack thereof. The TLDR is, I don't know anything about Mark Carney. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with Poilievre in terms of staying as leader of the party. I hope he does. I think that I think that there's probably a 70 to 80% chance that he will be removed as party leader. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes. I don't know who the hell else they're going to get that got as far as he did in terms of rallying the troops and getting us far, right? Because even though he lost his seat, it was very, very, very close. And for a while, it was really starting to look like he was, not going to lose his seat. And, irrespective of how you feel about him or his party, or whether you think he's an idiot or you think Carney's amazing and that Poilievre's an idiot, or you think Poilievre's a genius and Carney's an idiot and the country is going down the toilet or whatever, the fact remains is that before Poilievre was leader of the Conservatives were not anywhere near getting the kind of screen time that Poilievre managed to get, by basically cutting to the quick and being the bulldog that he is. And getting a lot of viewership and a lot of support and a lot of support overall for the party. And I don't think that you can take that away from him. I really don't think that you can. I think that it's very, very important to, I think it's extremely important that, we give people credit where credit's due, even if we don't necessarily agree with their policies. That's why I say I think with Poilievre, regardless of how you feel about him, he was a good showman, and he was very, very good at getting attention and bringing light to issues that, if somebody didn't have so much of a personality about them, might just kind of go around go off the radar, right? So in regardless of how it's done, it still encourages discussion. Then Blanchet, again, Quebec, polarizing issue in many ways. It's been since, long before Confederation, right? Les Deux Solitudes and all of that. But again, Blanchet is a master communicator, and he's very, very good at, getting his point across. And he also is good at thinking several steps ahead in terms of playing chess. And I think that his ability to look at things from different viewpoints, I think, really is unique. And I think it makes him a very good communicator. And I think that's, again, why he gets the kind of polarizing opinions that he does. And Carney, we don't know a whole lot about it. And, so yeah. Anyway, I think I've gone on long enough about this. And I'm going to end it, especially as we are down to one viewer. I actually went a lot longer than I thought I was going to go on about it. But I'm just sort of doing this off the cuff. Okay, well, we've got 2 viewers now. But again, I've been going on for 1 minutes. But if you enjoyed this diatribe, if you want to call it, please do hit the subscribe button for this channel and enjoy some of the more mainstream comments that we have. Also, if you are interested in Canadian stuff, I have a podcast that comes out on this channel called Slightly A Ways North, where I interview people from the 80s and early 90s from television shows in Canada. I just finished interviewing Fred Penner. I'm sure we all know Fred Penner, those of us that grew up in the 80s and early 90s. And I also had the good fortune to speak to Paul Chateau of the Frantics, boot to the head. I gave you a boot to the head. Captain Canoehead himself, Mr. Canoehead himself. And I also spoke to Eric Nagler of The Elephant Show. And I'm about to speak to Holly LaRock of Under the Umbrella Tree. So there's a good amount of Canadiana. I might come on tomorrow and talk about this a little bit more once I've formulated my thoughts, and there's going to be a lot more information that goes on in the next 24 hours. So for those of you that, for whatever reason, decided to come and listen to me blather about this bullshit, thank you. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much, and I will see you one way or another, I guess tomorrow. And yeah, so as I say, please do subscribe, and thank you very much. Take care.